There are many theories surrounding the mysterious disappearance of the Indus people from Mohenjo-Daro. In 1977, British researcher David Davenport discovered that part of the archaeological site showed evidence of having been destroyed by an extremely powerful explosion.
He found what remains of the blast.
The idea of an ancient superweapon might sound like something out of a myth at first glance. But what if such a weapon truly existed, hidden for centuries? In the remote Himalayas, a discovery was made that could rewrite history. Was this mysterious artifact responsible for wiping out an entire civilization? Join us as we dive into the details of this shocking find. Let's begin. 1. Underground caves. Over 10,000 caves carved into the cliffs of Mustang, Nepal were found in the 90s, and they're over 2,000 years old. These caves aren't just tough to reach, they're practically impossible to access, even for today's explorers. Archaeologists dug up some bodies, sparking all kinds of questions. Why did these people live in such high, hidden spots? Some believe these caves were built to shield an ancient civilization from some powerful force, a superweapon, maybe the very thing that wiped them out. And the engineering? Advanced, no doubt. Whoever built them clearly knew what they were doing, which only makes the mystery surrounding this lost civilization even juicier. Like and subscribe right now, and you'll have amazing luck for the rest of the week. 2. Ancient descriptions of weapons.
Weapons have existed as long as humankind.
Ancient texts might be hinting at a superweapon from an extinct civilization in the Himalayas. Indian epics like the Mahabharata talk about weapons like the Brahmastra and Agneyastra, capable of wiping out entire cities and armies. Sounds familiar, right? Some researchers think these could be ancient versions of modern nukes. In one scene, there's a weapon described as having all the power of the universe, leading to a blast that leveled buildings, vaporized people, and left the land barren for centuries. High radiation areas have been found in northern India and the Himalayas. Coincidence? Maybe not. 3. Vimana technology.
Aerospace engineer Travis Taylor has obtained a model of an aircraft whose design specifications are based solely on information gleaned from ancient Indian texts that are believed to have been formally set to writing in 500 BC.
There are wild theories surrounding Vimana technology. Ancient texts like the Ramayana and Mahabharata describe these flying machines not just as tools for travel, but as powerful superweapons used in epic wars. And we're not talking slow flights either. These things supposedly traveled between planets at mind-blowing speeds. Take the Pushpaka Vimana, for example. This was a flying palace owned by the demon king Ravana, soaring across vast distances. What's even crazier? Sanskrit texts like the Vaimanika Shastra detail their propulsion systems, suggesting they might have used mercury or even anti-gravity tech. Modern researchers are fascinated. 4. The tale of Brahmastra. The Brahmastra is like the ultimate party crasher, lighting up the sky with a mega fireball, thunder, and all that jazz. This bad boy is so intense, it melts glaciers and makes mountains cry for their mama. But it's got nothing on the Brahmashira Astra. This beast leaves the land barren for a whopping 37.32 trillion years. Talk about a long time, with no green in sight and no drops falling from the sky. In the epic showdown of the Mahabharata, Ashwatthama threw down the Brahmastra at Arjuna, who clapped back with the same heat. Things were about to go south until Narada and Vyasa jumped in to cool things off. Arjuna, being the noble dude he is, pulled back his weapon. But Ashwatthama, he went full rage mode and aimed it at Uttara's unborn kid. 5. Advanced knowledge of metallurgy. Metallurgy in the Indian subcontinent goes way back, even before the 3rd millennium BCE. Early Vedic texts, like the Rig Veda, talk about metals like copper and iron. India's connections with the Near East and the Greco-Roman world helped spread metallurgical knowledge. Then came the Mughals from 1526 to 1857, pushing metalworking to new heights. Sadly, British colonial policies knocked the industry down. Excavations in the Middle Ganga Valley show ironworking as early as 1800 BCE. By 500 BCE, southern India produced high-quality steel using the crucible technique known as woots, which was exported far and wide. Ancient India's mastery of metallurgy, even by 6th century standards, left Europe in the dust. 6. The unexplained, UFO-like flying objects in ancient Hindu texts. Despite all the fancy tech and discoveries in history, you won't believe we're still scratching our heads over some ancient mysteries. Take the 40,000-year-old Lion Man sculpture in Germany. Super old, super weird, and definitely something supernatural going on there. And Stonehenge? Yeah, it works like a solar calendar, but no one knows who decided to put those rocks together. Then we've got theories that sound straight out of a sci-fi movie. In India, carvings in the temple of Husalasvar look like people in spacesuits, and cave paintings even show UFOs. Some think aliens visited Earth back then, and the Vedas, ancient Hindu texts from 1500 BCE. These verses have been passed down for millennia, and their wild descriptions haven't changed one bit. 7. Evidence of high radiation. Some researchers are losing their minds over the unusual radiation levels found in places like northern India and the Himalayas. They're saying it could be proof of a nuclear-like explosion that happened thousands of years ago. Mohenjo-Daro, an ancient city in today's Pakistan, gets a lot of attention here. Back in the 90s, archaeologists found radioactive ash and vitrified bricks there, suggesting intense heat, maybe even a nuclear blast, wiped it out 4,000 years ago. And don't even get me started on the skeletons. No visible injuries, yet they dropped dead suddenly. 8. The lost city of Shambhala. There's this legendary place called Shambhala. It's supposedly hidden somewhere deep in the Himalayas, but don't even think about finding it unless you're enlightened or something. Some say it's not just a spiritual paradise, but an ancient civilization with super advanced tech that could wipe out entire societies. The earliest mentions, Tibetan Buddhist texts like the Kalachakra Tantra, talk about Shambhala as a peaceful place, but also prophesied a future war in which they'll use their fancy tech to crush dark forces. Nuclear-level stuff, maybe? People have been hunting for this place for ages, like in the 1920s, when Russian mystic Nicholas Roerich went searching. Some think it's high up in the mountains, while others say it's on another plane of existence. Still, no one's found it, which just adds to the mystery. 9. Rupkund Lake. Imagine stumbling upon a lake filled with skeletons. Rupkund Lake, aka Skeleton Lake, sits over 16,000 feet up in the Himalayas, hiding hundreds of bones under its icy surface. In 1942, a forest ranger found this creepy spot, and scientists have been puzzled ever since. Initially, people thought these were Japanese soldiers, but these bones date back to around 850 AD. DNA tests reveal they come from different groups, even folks from the Mediterranean. Crazy, huh? Most of them died from blunt force trauma to the skull. Think massive hailstones dropping from the sky. But some whisper about ancient superweapons causing this chaos. Could there have been some advanced tech up in the Himalayas? It's a wild idea, but it sure adds to the mystery. 10. Legends of Agastya and the Agnyastra. Rishi Agastya, the legendary sage with wisdom beyond measure, wasn't just some monk sitting in the mountains. Nope, this guy knew weapons that could make any army tremble. Ever heard of the Agnyastra? Yeah, this thing was no joke. Linked to Agni, the fire god, this fiery weapon could unleash flames so intense that entire armies would be turned to ash. Some believe this isn't just a myth, but could hint at advanced tech from way back. Theories even suggest these weapons might have wiped out ancient civilizations around the Himalayas. And if you think that's impressive, only something like the Varunastra, a water-based counter-weapon, could put a stop to it. Agastya? He wasn't just any old sage. His connection to cosmic forces, it might be a clue that ancient civilizations were playing with some serious fire. 11. Sudden climate change. Some researchers think ancient superweapons might have messed with the weather so badly that it triggered massive climate shifts. One example, the collapse of the Indus Valley civilization around 4,500 years ago. Monsoons went weak, farming became impossible, and people were forced to pack up and head for greener pastures. Now, imagine the same thing happening in the Himalayas. If some ancient civilization unleashed one of these superweapons, it could have caused unforeseen occurrences or other extreme weather, making the area unlivable and wiping out the population fast. Geological evidence from the Himalayas even backs this up. Small shifts in monsoons had huge impacts on the environment. 12. Lost Horizons influence. James Hilton's Lost Horizon, published way back in 1933, has pretty much redefined how we think about Shangri-La. And it's even got some wild theories about ancient superweapons in the Himalayas tied to it. The story? Simple. Hilton's Shangri-La is a secret paradise way up in the mountains, where people live in peace, keeping their wisdom locked away for when the world goes to ruin. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Some folks believe Hilton didn't just make it up. They think he was pulling from the Tibetan myth of Shambhala, a hidden kingdom that holds the key to saving the world in times of crisis. Oh, and those theorists, they're saying this place might have had tech so advanced it could have wiped out entire civilizations. 13. 600-million-year-old time capsule. Researchers from the Indian Institute of Science, IISC, and Niigata University in Japan have made a wild discovery. They found water droplets trapped in mineral deposits in the Himalayas. These little droplets might be leftovers from an ancient ocean that existed 600 million years ago. These deposits are packed with calcium and magnesium carbonates and might just be the key to understanding a massive oxygenation event in Earth's history. We're talking about the snowball Earth glaciation, where the planet was pretty much a frozen popsicle between 700 and 500 million years ago. What came next? The second great oxygenation event, which paved the way for complex life forms to evolve. The researchers figured out that a lack of calcium in these ancient basins, likely because rivers weren't doing their job, led to high magnesium levels. This trapped the ocean water, and get this, photosynthetic cyanobacteria might have been responsible for releasing oxygen into the atmosphere. 14. Geologic history. Over the last 65 million years, Earth's plate tectonic forces have been busy crafting the Eurasian mountain ranges, including the mighty Himalayas. Back in the Jurassic, the Tethys Ocean hugged southern Eurasia. Fast forward 180 million years, and the Indian subcontinent broke free, heading straight for a showdown with the Eurasian plate. For 130–140 million years, the Indian-Australian plate squeezed the Tethys Trench, bending rocks like paper. By 40-50 million years ago, India crashed into Eurasia, lifting the Tibetan Plateau. About 20 million years ago, the Himalayas' growth kicked into high gear as the Indian plate pushed under Eurasia. 15. A tiny line on a map led to conflict in the Himalayas. Let me tell you about April 30th, 1989, when Majin Abdul Bilal and his hardcore Pakistan Army Special Service Group team went all-action movie hero on Peak 22-158 in the Karakoram Range. Despite the thin air and brutal weather, they chop it in after 4 guys already cashed out trying to scale it. They kicked off their mission without ropes, eyeballing an Indian lookout. Out popped 2 Indian guards, and Bilal was all, "Drop your weapons, guys." Words were exchanged, shots flew, and bam, 1 Indian was down. Being a decent chap, Bilal gave the other guy a free pass to vanish into the fog. This face-off, dubbed the Battle of Peak 22-158, is literally the highest and deadliest showdown on record. 30 years and counting, Pakistan and India have been duking it out over the icy wastes of Siachen Glacier. Despite a 2003 truce, the Grim Reaper still punches the clock yearly. 16. The Geographer. On June 27, 1968, Airgram A-1245 crash-landed on the desk of Robert D. Hodgson, the assistant big shot geographer at the U.S. State Department. This hot potato, tossed over by William Weathersby from the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi, is all about India blowing its top over U.S. maps, showing Kashmir as a battleground. Now, maps are like the DNA of national pride for these countries, carved up by partition. And here's Hodgson, sitting in the big chair with the weight of 325 international boundaries to get right, courtesy of his heavy-duty role that even the Department of Defense and the CIA can't ignore. 17. People of the Himalayas. The Himalayas are a melting pot of cultures and languages, thanks to migrations from Central Asia, Iran, India, and East Asia. In the Great and Tethys Himalayas, you'll mostly find Tibetans and Tibeto-Burman speakers. At the same time, the Indo-European crowd hangs out in the Lesser Himalayas, with groups like the Kashmiri, Gadi, and Gujari. Up in the Kashmir region, the Champa, Ladakhi, Balti, and Dard call the mountains home. Himachal Pradesh sees a mix of Indo-European and Tibeto-Burman speakers, depending on the town. Nepal, right in the heart of the Himalayas, is mostly Indo-European speaking Pahari, but you've also got Tibeto-Burman speakers like the Newar, Tamang, and Sherpa. Bhutan and Sikkim, a mix of Lepcha, Bhutia, and Pahari, thanks to migration from eastern Nepal. 18. Animal life. The eastern Himalayas are practically cousins with southern China and Southeast Asia, teeming with critters that dig subtropical vibes and mountain chill. But flip the map to the western side, and you've got a crew that's all about that Mediterranean and Turkmenian flair. Think ancient VIPs like giraffes and hippos once throwing down in the Siwalik Range. Up where the air gets thin, the real tough guys like snow leopards, brown bears, and Tibetan yaks hold the fort. Nearly 800 species in Nepal alone, with magpies, titmice, and Himalayan griffons ruling the roost, while snow partridges and Cornish choughs ace the high-altitude life. 19. Melting Himalayan ice reveals 1,700 ancient and unknown virus species. Scientists have been freaking out over ancient viruses waking up from their icy graves thanks to global warming. Over 1,700 old-as-dirt virus leftovers were unearthed from the Gulia Glacier on the Tibetan Plateau. We're talking viruses chilling for over 40,000 years during 9 different climate gigs. Researchers, diving deep into a 1,000-foot ice core, have pieced together how these viral mobs evolved as the climate did its dance, especially wild was the viral party at the end of the last ice age, around 11,500 years ago. 20. Humans have lived in the shadow of the Himalayas for more than 5,000 years. The Tibetan Plateau, high up near the Himalayas, seems like the last place anyone would want to live, right? It's harsh, cold, and downright unforgiving. Archaeologists have been scratching their heads for years, trying to figure out when humans first dared to set foot in this brutal landscape. Well, guess what? Thanks to a new dating technique, researchers now have the first solid proof that humans were chilling out 5,000 years ago. Yep, on the central southern Tibetan Plateau, of all places. This area, tucked in the shadow of the towering Himalayan peaks, was one of the final frontiers for human settlement. 21. Developing new techniques. Michael Meyer and his crew at the Innsbruck OSL Dating Lab in Austria just leveled up the archaeology game. They've cooked up a slick new technique called rock surface burial dating, perfect for tackling the headache of dating ancient stone tools. Usual OSL dating. It's all about zapping buried sand grains with blue and green light to see how much juice they've been storing from radiation while playing hide and seek from daylight. The luminescence that pops off tells you how long those grains have been chilling underground. 22. Understanding how humans adapted to the Himalayas environment. Turns out both ancient boneheads and today's Tibetans are rocking some serious genetic upgrades that let them thrive where the air's as thin as the VIP section at a concert. Thanks to a couple of superhero genes, EGLN1 and EPAS1, they're all set to handle the low oxygen party at high altitudes. But EGLN1 was the early bird, showing up on the scene before EPAS1. And here's where it gets spicy. Dirienzo stumbled upon a plot twist showing these genes didn't just pop up overnight. They've had a wild ride through history, adapting humans to some intense environments. He's betting that digging up more ancient DNA will spill even more secrets. Meanwhile, Chungwon Jong, the brainy Samsung fellow from Dirienzo's crew, just cranked up the wow factor by mapping out the first ancient whole genomes from East Asia. 23. Giant gateway to hell. In Siberia. You think you've seen crazy? Wait till you hear about the Batagaika crater in Siberia, nicknamed the Gateway to Hell. This beast is growing like there's no tomorrow thanks to climate change. What started as a small dip in the 1960s has exploded to a massive 200 acres wide and 300 feet deep, resembling some prehistoric creature. Scientists like Roger Michaelides are racing to figure out how bad it'll get. The melting permafrost is coughing up 4,000 to 5,000 tons of carbon annually, and that number's only climbing. The crater's growth is now a jaw-dropping 1 million cubic meters each year. Nikita Tananayev pointed out how the surrounding rivers are getting hit with sediment, causing trouble for local villages. If you think this is bad, the region's not done destabilizing yet. More chaos is on the way. 24. 5,000 years in the shadow of Mount Everest. Scientists have pulled off something huge at Surrey, a lithic artifact site sitting at a staggering 450 meters in the shadow of Mount Everest. Armed with high-altitude archaeologist Mark Aldendefer from UC Merced and mineralogist Peter Tropper from Innsbruck, we decided to give a new dating method a real-world test. Surrey has always been loaded with ancient artifacts, but our method revealed some shockers. The oldest artifacts there date back between 5,200 and 5,500 years. That's right, linked to ancient quarrying activities. While older sites exist in other parts of Tibet, Surrey just snagged the title as the oldest securely dated site in the central southern Tibetan plateau. Oh, And did I mention its proximity to Nangpa La Pass, the ancient route connecting Tibetans and Nepali Sherpas? This discovery just might rewrite how we look at archaeological sites worldwide. 25. Supermountains. Our Earth wasn't messing around when it decided to go big. I mean, imagine mountain ranges that make the Himalayas look like molehills, stretching thousands of miles more, splitting whole supercontinents right down the middle. Geologists have a name for these mammoth monstrosities: the supermountains. Zi Ju, some hotshot postdoc at the Australian National University, spills the beans in a study, saying these weren't your average hilltops. Picture the Himalayas, then multiply that by 3 or 4 times. Absolute behemoths. These ancient peaks weren't just eye candy, they were game changers. In research published in the Earth and Planetary Science Letters on February 15, 2022, Zhu and her crew claim these mountains could have been the turbo boosters of life on Earth. How? Well, as they crumbled and wore down, they sent a bulk of nutrients into the oceans, cranking up energy production and kicking evolution into overdrive. These supermountains might be behind the massive bursts in life forms we see popping up about 2 billion years ago with complex cells, and again 541 million years ago during the Cambrian explosion. Those mountains didn't just sit pretty, they reshaped life on Earth. That's all for today. I hope you found the discoveries about the ancient superweapon in the Himalayas fascinating. Which part of the story intrigued you the most? Do you think this weapon could have played a role in the downfall of an ancient civilization? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, take care.